He shoved my friend so hard she crashed into a coffee table, leaving a bruise the size of a fist. Thought he could get away with it. What he didn't know is that I had the keys to his entire future. And with one phone call, I made his education and maybe even his stay in the country disappear. If you've ever felt that burning need for justice when someone you love gets hurt, hit that subscribe button right now. Smash that like button too. Because today's story isn't just about revenge, it's about taking down someone who thought he was untouchable. Let's dive in. This all happened back in the before times, when the internet was still new, clunky, and full of potential. I was a student at my local junior college, trying to juggle classes and a part-time job at the school's administration office. Life was actually going pretty well. Around this time, I'd moved in with my girlfriend. Let's call her Lucy. Rent was cheaper if we split it. Honestly, it felt like the next step in our relationship. One night, Lucy mentioned she had invited a new friend from her class to come over for a game night. It sounded fun to me. Gathered a couple of buddies, set up some board games, and ordered pizza. When Lucy's friend arrived, I did a double take. Her name was Sarah, and she was someone I vaguely knew from high school. We weren't exactly close back then, but we got along fine. That night, we laughed, played games, and it was actually a blast. From then on, Sarah started coming over regularly. Dinners, game nights, movie marathons. She became part of the crew. She even brought her boyfriend around a couple of times. His name was Jay, and let me tell you, he did not fit in. While the rest of us were laughing, talking, and connecting, he sat there stiff and standoffish. Barely said a word. You know the type, the kind of guy who looks like being in a room full of normal human beings is beneath him. Nobody really wanted him there, but we tolerated him for Sarah's sake. Thankfully, he only showed up 2 or 3 times. After that, he always had some excuse not to come. At the time, I thought, good. Less awkward energy in the room. But then, things took a turn. One evening, out of nowhere, Sarah called Lucy. Her voice was shaky, broken, and she was crying. She asked if she could come over. Of course, we said yes. When she arrived, she spilled everything. Jay had been furious with her, accusing her of cheating just because she spent so much time at our place. Here's the kicker. He didn't even specify who he thought she was supposedly cheating with. Was it me? Was it Lucy? Was it both of us? The accusation was ridiculous, but ridiculous doesn't mean harmless. Jay's anger had boiled over. He'd unleashed a torrent of cruel, degrading names at her. And when she tried to walk past him, to leave, he shoved her. Sarah stumbled backward, tripped over their coffee table, and landed hard. The fall left a massive bruise across her lower back and hip. Lucy told me later that Sarah had shown her the bruise in private. It was ugly. When I heard that, my blood went cold. I felt my pulse hammer in my ears. My fists clenched so tight, my knuckles went white. I'm not a fighter. I'm a big guy, sure, but I've never been in a fight in my life. Still, every fiber of me wanted to go find Jay, drag him outside, and make sure he regretted laying a single hand on her. But I didn't. Violence wasn't the answer. Instead, a different kind of revenge began to form in my mind. Hit him where it really hurt. Here's what Jay didn't know. I worked in the administration building at our college. My job gave me access to student records, class schedules, student IDs, even enrollment statuses. And I knew something crucial. The deadline to add or drop classes without penalty was fast approaching. Once that date passed, your schedule was locked. You were either in or out. So I looked him up. There he was. It's a full schedule. His student ID, everything I needed, and another important detail. Jay wasn't just some local kid. He was an international student, which meant he had to stay enrolled in a certain number of units to legally remain in the country. That's when the plan crystallized. I wouldn't lay a finger on him, wouldn't even raise my voice. I'd simply erase his education. On the very last day possible, I picked up the dedicated enrollment phone, the same phone staff used to manage student schedules back before online registration was a thing. One by one, I dropped every single one of his classes. Click, drop, click, drop. Then, to twist the knife, I went through the catalog and re-added him into every class that carried extra course fees, lab fees, material fees, you name it. If the system would let me stick him with it, I did. By the time I hung up, Jay's pristine student record was a financial disaster. He wasn't just unenrolled, he was in debt to the school, and if you owed money, you couldn't request transcripts, you couldn't re-enroll, you couldn't do anything until that balance was cleared. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding, adrenaline coursing through me. No punches thrown, no cops called, just quiet, devastating revenge. Now, I couldn't exactly go bragging about what I'd done. The whole thing had to stay secret. If anyone traced it back to me, I'd be the one in trouble. But a little payoff came faster than I expected. A few days later, Sarah came by again. She told us she was dreading seeing Jay in their shared English class. She hadn't spoken to him since breaking up with him, and she was terrified of sitting across the room from him for the rest of the semester. But when Tuesday rolled around, Jay showed up to class, but when he walked in, there was already someone new sitting in his usual spot. Not only that, but there weren't enough chairs. The class was full. The professor noticed the commotion and decided to take roll. One by one, names were called. And guess who wasn't on the list? That's right, Jay. Sarah told me he tried to argue, insisting he was enrolled, that there must be some mistake, but the professor had the official roster in hand. And when your name isn't on it, it isn't on it. End of story. Jay stood there, humiliated, while everyone else looked on. The professor told him he'd have to go to administration to sort it out. But of course, I already knew exactly what he'd find there. A mess of dropped classes and a stack of new fees he couldn't possibly explain away. Sarah never saw him in that class again. Weeks later, I peeked at his records one more time, just out of curiosity. All the classes with extra fees were gone, but so were any other classes. His schedule was completely empty. Had he been kicked out of school? Had his visa been revoked? I don't know for sure, but one thing was certain. His semester was ruined. His education halted. His future here, hanging by a thread. For me, the satisfaction didn't come from watching him suffer directly. It came from knowing Sarah no longer had to face him in class. From knowing he wasn't hovering around campus, pretending to be a student while seething with jealousy and cruelty. And deep down I knew this. Jay had crossed a line the moment he put his hands on her. Some people deserve to be inconvenienced. Some people deserve to feel powerless after trying to make others feel small. Did I go too far? Maybe. But every time that doubt creeps in, I remember the bruise. I remember Sarah's tears. I remember the way Lucy described her shaking hands as she told the story. And then I think, no, he earned every bit of it. Revenge isn't always about fists or yelling matches. Sometimes the most devastating payback is silent, surgical, the kind that leaves no fingerprints, but changes everything. In the end, Jay learned a brutal lesson. Mess with me, and especially mess with my friends, and your future might just disappear overnight. So what do you think? Was this the perfect dose of poetic justice? Or did I take it too far? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next tale of sweet, sweet revenge. And remember, justice always finds a way.